gas.
Welcome to All Gas, All Georgia Sports. I'm glad you guys are here, and we're going to do things a little bit differently. So right now it is Saturday, September 24th, and we're going to do a college football themed episode here, and then also going to touch on a little bit of baseball at the end. And then tomorrow on Sunday, I'm going to record an NFL recap, a whole Falcons thing, and that way these episodes are going to be good for you throughout the week. So whenever you listen to it, even if it's Wednesday, but you see the recording date of Saturday, don't you worry. It should still be relevant because we're going to talk about the Georgia Bulldogs. Close game, sort of, against Kent State. We're going to do a segment on the college football playoff expansion. Yes, you heard me correctly. Many of you may already know about this, but I was thinking about it, did a little research, going to talk about it. Albert Pujols makes history with his 700th career home run, and the Braves' time is winding down. Can we do it? Can we catch the Mets in the East? Of course, I think that answer is yes, but, we're down to the wire. Clock's a-ticking. So before we get started, as always, going to give you guys a trivia question here, and this is going to be Georgia-themed, UGA-themed, that is. Who has the most receiving yards in UGA history? Who has the most receiving yards in UGA history? Everyone pretty much knows rushing. Passing is actually something that is a tougher question for a lot of Georgia fans. Aaron Murray is the leading passer for UGA, but receiving, who is our leading receiver? So think about that. See if you know it. We're going to circle back around to the answer at the end of the episode, as always. But let's go ahead and jump right into UGA. And also, too, I don't know what it is, excuse me, that's going around. I got sick like 10 days ago, maybe 11 days ago. And it was as I was on my way down to Panama City for a bachelor party. And hey, look, I took what I needed to. I took some Alka-Seltzer when needed and got my rest. So I was able to show up for my friend down there. But it was tough. I was pretty sick, and I just have stayed sick. So I haven't recorded some this week because of that. But, I'm feeling fine. It's more just annoying, but it's been like 11 days now. So if you're also feeling it out there, I feel you, man. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's COVID, but apparently that's dead. Biden said it. Hey, not me. Biden said it. So, hallelujah there. Pandemic is over, but this might be COVID. I have no idea. Okay, so getting into what is important here, and that is the UGA game. So UGA beats Kent State 39-22. And this was the toughest game that we've had yet, which is kind of hilarious when you think about it. When you look at the schedule, you would have thought that South Carolina or Oregon would have given us our toughest game to date by week 4. But no, sure enough, it is Kent State. They're from Ohio. I didn't know that until just a few moments ago, but they played us good. I mean, hats off to Kent State. I mean, so before this game, UGA had allowed 10 points total over the first 3 games. Georgia's defense has only allowed 10 points. Averages out to whatever that was, 3.33 points per game coming into this game. Kent State had 13 at half. Is that right? Yeah. Going into halftime, it was 13-26. So we had this game the whole time. I mean, we made a bunch of mistakes in the first half. Georgia had 3 turnovers in the first half. So we were sloppy. And who knows, mentally, you're getting ready for, some SEC opponents. You see Kent State on the schedule. I'm sure the coaching staff does as good as they can to try and keep everybody focused and right here, right now, next thing, keep chopping wood, all that stuff we've heard. But, I'm not going to lie, I saw Kent State, and I was like, it was hard to even find the game. Like on the broadcast, like DirecTV didn't have it. We had to then switch to Hulu, and thankfully we have both now because we had to add Hulu so we could get Red Zone, but I didn't want to give up DirecTV just yet because I need Bally Sports to watch the Braves. So now we're paying for both. It's ridiculous. It's so stupid. I hate that. I don't know who's responsible for the Bally Sports only being available through DirecTV. I'm pretty sure that's the only streaming service that has it. But whoever did that, you suck. Because we had Hulu for YouTube TV for a while, because we do the Red Zone thing or the Sunday Ticket or whatever. but we've had to just play that game. So anyways, had to switch through a few different places to finally find the game because, the rest of the country had the same thought that I did, probably as the UGA did, of like, oh, it's Kent State, whatever, who cares? We're going to destroy them. We're going to bury them into the dirt. And even though the final score was 39-22, that score is deceiving. And actually, speaking of the broadcast, this was funny. I don't know if you guys caught this too, but the broadcast was terrible. Like, we really were, forgotten as far as the broadcast goes. It ended up being, we found it on either ESPN Plus or like SEC Plus. I don't even know exactly which one it was. But it was hilarious because like there would be a commercial, and then right at the end of the commercial would just pause, it was like in the middle of the commercial, and it would just pause and then go to just a muted still shot of the stadium, not showing anything. And then it would switch back to like a clip of a commercial, then back to the game, but then like there wouldn't be any sound, and then you'd see the kickoff, and like the camera would just stay on the kicker and wouldn't switch to the ball. So like the whole game was doing stuff like that. It was hilarious. Like it was so like they were like, okay, give this one to the interns. It doesn't matter. It was like it was really funny. So yeah, back to the game. Kent State. They they just were scrappy. So get this. And this is against UGA's defense. The University of Georgia, legendary defense, just sent the most players ever to the NFL draft out of any college team in history in 1 year. And we revamped that defense with a lot of five-star, recruits, a lot of guys who have just been kind of waiting for their chance to get in and to plug and play and to get in and get some playing time. And we've had 5 years consecutive of being in the top 5 in recruiting nationally. So we've got so many good players. And against that defense, let's see, Devontex Walker, wide receiver for Kent State, had 106 yards on 7 receptions and a touchdown. Marquez Cooper, their running back, he's really good. He had 4.3 yards per carry, but had like 22 carries for 90 yards and a touchdown. And Colin Schlee, quarterback for Kent State, I liked watching this guy. He went 14 for 21 for 174 yards, so that's not eye-popping. He had 1 touchdown and 1 pick. But if you watched that game, like he was really athletic. He's got this like sidearm throw, but it doesn't look like when Phillip Rivers threw the ball. I always thought to myself, this person is not supposed to play football. He just, I don't know what it is. He willed himself past his destiny and just made himself athletic, because there's no way a professional quarterback should look like that when they threw the football, but he made it work. And Schlee, when he threw, he didn't look unathletic like that, but his arm motion was almost as ridiculous. But a lot of these throws were sidearm throws. He looked like a baseball player, kind of, like it was just, and he would come over the top from time to time too, but I guess, he had multiple different arm angles. He was quick. He was bouncing around the pocket. He was fun to watch. He's a good quarterback. So they had their skill position players at Kent State were really impressive, and they were just playing hard. It's like I said, the score doesn't reflect it being a close game, but they were not afraid of Georgia at all. The coach didn't look flustered like you see sometimes with these small schools, and the coaches are on the sideline just going like, oh my God, at least our school's getting paid for this, but you can tell they're just like, man, let's just get out of here. Let's make sure our kids don't get hurt. And the players are just completely out of it. But Kent State didn't care. They didn't give a shit. They were awesome. So, yeah, hats off to you guys. As far as UGA goes, our stats weren't eye-popping either. I'd say that theirs were more eye-popping contextually because they were playing Georgia. But Stetson Bennett goes 27 for 36. He had 272 yards, but no touchdowns, 1 interception. We had 3 turnovers in the first half, and we just seemed less explosive, in my opinion. But Brock Bowers is the only eye-popping statistical player, of course, as he always is. He actually had 2 touchdowns with 137 all-purpose yards. I want to say it was like 77 rushing, believe it or not, maybe 60 receiving or vice versa, something like that. But he had 2 rushing touchdowns, and look, he's going to be a first-round pick. I mean, he's so good. I said this last year. He was our best offensive playmaker last year, and we had some good guys last year, but he stole the show. He looks different. He separates himself. It's just the eye test. If someone knew nothing about the University of Georgia or any of our players, you watch one game, and at the end of the game, you would go, who's that guy? Who's that dude that just keeps catching it and running past everybody? Who is he? Why is he open all the time? He just is. He's great. He's a great player. So good job, Brock Bowers, for continuing to impress. And yeah, God, man. You know what's cool about being a college fan? And this is something that my wife is not from Georgia. We met out in Colorado, and it's not really, the college football culture is non-existent in Colorado. Even though the University of Colorado has been good in the past, it's not like, it's just, you can't compare the two. So she comes down here and she's like, I don't get this whole college football thing. And she also doesn't really get how I know all of these like players in the NFL and where they played at college, what they looked like in college, and what SEC team they were from, and like why I was a huge, I mean, like all of us, I would actively find Rams games when Todd Gurley was drafted, when he was playing for the Rams, because I wanted to see him. I want to see these guys succeed. So that just makes when you're a college football fan, it makes the football experience better in every way, because you get to follow these guys through their career. And man, I really hope that Brock Bowers is successful at the next level. I think him and Darnell Washington both will be. I mean, every bit of information that we have at our disposal suggests that they're going to be very successful. So yeah, he's legit. He's awesome. We ended up taking care of business, of course. But, you know, it made me think, like, what would have happened if the final score was closer? Because they played us closer than the score, you know, and we had some of those mistakes. We shot ourselves in the foot. But, like, it really was. Like, it didn't, you know, it didn't feel like I can't even remember who the last team we played that we bulldozed. I really can't even remember who it was. But it was, like, the team where they shortened the fourth quarter just to not kill their players. Oh crap! It escapes me, but you guys know what I'm talking about. But like, what if the score was closer? With the rankings, with the perception, with the, you know, I don't know, just how people are viewing or how seriously they take the Bulldogs. I mean, one game can change somebody's perspective. And now I know that doesn't matter. What matters is the players on the field, how they handle it in the locker room, and what, you know, kind of culture Kirby Smart is cultivating or has cultivated. So yeah, it doesn't matter. But I couldn't help but think, and it just made me think that the playoffs need to be bigger than they are. Because I was like, okay, you know, you are a great team. Like, think of how many Georgia teams pre-Kirby Smart, we would always do this. Remember, we would lose a game in the beginning of the year, and then it's like, okay, well, all hopes are lost. We're not going to the national championship now because we have one loss, which is so stupid. But that's how it was college football playoff. And it's still sort of like that, but it's a little bit better now, just because there's more chances. But, you know, it just got me thinking, like, man, we really need more, because there are teams that are just outside the top four that I'm like, man, it was like they could play like these other teams well. Like Georgia would have a hard time against, you know, I don't know. Who's 5 right now? Clemson's 5 right now. Like Georgia Clemson in the playoff, that's not a throwaway game. Like the separation, and I'm excited about this because I think that the teams are getting closer in how good they are. And I think NIL has a big part to play in this. I think it will continue to have a big part to play in this, getting talent spread out amongst other schools. I'm all for that. I think it's great. I kind of miss the days when, I don't know, more teams were good. Honestly, I really do. And this is coming from a guy who is a fan of the Georgia Bulldogs, who is in that elite, you know, category. But anyways, so I was thinking about this. I was thinking about how we need more teams. We need more teams in the playoffs. And sure enough, you know, I stumbled upon all sorts of stuff talking about the actual college football expansion that's happening. So maybe I'm late to the party here. I had heard whispers in the air about this. I know that there was some rumblings earlier in the year. And I think like the ACC and one other conference was against expanding the playoffs. I'm not sure why, but I guess they've changed their tune now, because earlier in September, there was a unanimous vote to expand the college football playoff to 12 teams. And this information is from an article on ESPN.com published on September 2nd. But earlier this month, the board of managers unanimously voted to expand this. And I was thinking in my head 8 teams, but they've expanded it to 12. They've been wanting to do 12 for a long time. And the plan is that they're going to expand the playoff to 12 teams in 2026. but they're pushing for this to happen as early as 2024. So they're really wanting to roll this out soon. They see, and I think it's a great idea. It just makes sense. I mean, one, it's going to be a lot of money for them, so it makes sense for that reason, of course. But right now, what they're challenged with, so this is happening. It is moving to 12 teams. It's when, not if. So the playoffs, if they, the issue with getting a 12-team playoff in 2024 right now is logistical challenges, because you got to think, these are huge TV contracts. You got to get hotels for fans, for players. You got to get venues who are willing to do it. They also have to make sure they're not conflicting with NFL scheduling, which takes a while to go, okay, you're here. And not just NFL scheduling, like physically where they're playing, but also like their time slots, like how many networks can show things at the same time. And, how far in advance do they book these things? I'm not entirely sure, but like the logistical challenge is extreme. However, there's an estimated $450 million in revenue to be had for doing this, for expanding the playoffs. So when they see numbers like that, and it could be more, I've heard some numbers say it's over $1 billion, but maybe net revenue is probably more like $450 million. But who's to say? I think it could be more than that because, what's going to happen when they expand the playoff? I think it's a win-win for everyone. I mean, one, if you just look at it, logically, you're going to enhance viewership. You're going to cultivate fan bases and expose the energy of college football to the entire country because people aren't as into it anymore. I mean, that's true. In the Northeast or in the Midwest a lot of times, or like even like in the West Coast. I don't know what USC Nation is anymore since it's been so long since they've been really prominent. But I would imagine this would reignite some fan bases because even though if your team, probably doesn't have a shot on paper, if you make it into the playoffs, you're in the playoffs. I mean, look at how crazy March Madness is every year. The Braves won the World Series last year. They were not supposed to do that. And then when the Nationals won it, they were a wild card team, I'm pretty sure, when they won it. So that's always been the deal with playoffs, is just make it to the tournament. If you can make it, you got a shot. And so, like, when you start getting teams that are ranked, like, let's say, USC's ranked 9th, and they make it into the playoffs, what's that going to do for viewership? And is that going to reignite maybe some suppressed fans, who would just kind of have figured that their team wasn't going to make it, and they're not Alabama? So I think it's a huge deal. And also, look at this. Let's just take a look at the top 12 right now. So the top 12, because I think a lot of these teams would deserve a shot. We have 1 Georgia, 2 Alabama, 3 Ohio State, and this is before anything's updated, so this might shift a little bit throughout the week, but I think most of these teams have won today. So you have Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan. That's your top 4. But okay, you got Clemson at number 5. So okay, Clemson, Michigan, that's about as intriguing to me as Ohio State, Michigan. Then you have Oklahoma 6, USC 7, Kentucky 8, Oklahoma State 9, Arkansas is 10. They're playing right now as I'm recording this. Texas A&M, they were winning last I checked. Tennessee 11. God, we're going to get into that game. They had a great game against Florida. And then number 12 is NC State. So in the way that this is set up, the way that the playoffs would work with a 12-team playoff, first 4 teams would get a bye, and then 5 through 12 would play a round, and then based on seeding in your ranking, the winners of those first rounds would then play the top 4, and then the top 4, of course, the highest seed would get the lowest seed, in the first quarterfinal, I guess it would be, or yeah, it could be quarterfinal at that point. So I think that's fantastic. I mean, what does that do? It adds 2 more games. It only adds 1 more game for the top 4. But, the college football season is already shorter than the NFL. So, is that really going to stretch them that much? I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe it is. But it's more football. It's more competitive football. And, really, after watching Tennessee tonight, I would love to see a playoff game between Tennessee and Clemson. That'd be dope. And they could win. You know what I mean? These things could happen. Teams, if you make it to the dance, you can upset teams that you're not supposed to beat. And I don't really see I mean, other than NC State, but I haven't watched a whole lot of NC State, so I could be wrong there too. But like, I know that those top four are far and away better, but man, like, I'm just all about this. And so to bring this all the way back around to the Georgia Bulldogs is I was like thinking that an expanded playoff would finally, I think, erase this whole like, well, what if your team has a fluke, throughout the year? Let's say like the Alabama-Texas game, for instance. I don't know how good Texas is. Maybe Texas is for real. Maybe they're not. But let's say it turns out that Texas ended up having like 3 losses throughout the end when it's all said and done. And you go, man, Alabama lost to them. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, like they're human beings. Teams are allowed to struggle a little bit. In the NFL, how many times do you see great teams? How many times did the Patriots lose to the Dolphins throughout the year? They just always lost to the Dolphins. And then they would go on to win the Super Bowl. So it's like those things happen. And so I think when you get to these conference championship games, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now it all comes out in the wash. By the time you get to that point in the season, you know what these teams are about. I think the top 12 is a pretty accurate reflection of who deserves to be in. And so when you get to that level, when you get to that point at the end of the year, it just takes away this kind of silliness of like, and you could argue that that's what makes college football so exciting, is because every game is that important. Because if you lose one, and it still kind of has that. Because let's say if Michigan loses a game, well, then they might lose that bye week in the playoffs. But like, if number 4 or 3, any of those top 4, if they lose, they still have the pressure of losing that bye week, which is a big deal. It adds an extra game. It's extra stress. It's less rest. It's all those things. You get the worst seeding. You have to play a better team, all that stuff. So there still is pressure there, but it's not as absurd as like, if Kentucky beats Georgia, and Kentucky's a good team. They're ranked 8th right now. Let's say we lose to Kentucky. Our season's done. It's screwed. We're done. Like if Kent State had won, which would have been an absolute disaster, but if they had won, season's over. And yeah, a lot of times 1-loss teams, they get to the conference championship, and if they can still perform there, they get their shot. So it's not, 1 loss isn't as much of a nail in the coffin as it used to be, but it still is enough of one that I'm like, this is such a silly way to just have competition. It's so silly. Like the age of the bowl games, and speaking of bowl games, as far as more logistics are concerned, the way that this expanded playoff would work is all of these games in the tournament would still be a rotation of bowl games. So I think, these bowls are still going to get money. There's all the sponsors are still going to get their money, all the ad revenue and all the like Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl or the Rose Bowl. Like those things are still going to happen. It's just going to be a part of the playoff. And there's going to be some sort of rotation that kind of happens throughout that. So I think logistically that might be honestly easier than like the scheduling and the actually getting people there and getting these TV contracts. So, yeah, fun stuff though. I love that. And I love it because I think it's just going to give people that dose of college football that I think a lot of people around the country, unless you're in the South, are missing out on. So if you look just real quick, like, because I'm thinking like, okay, why is college football that cool? Like, why is people who are not professional, who are less talented playing, why do we love that so much? Because the NFL is better. It's better talent. It's better competition. The games are better. The playoffs are more fair. You've got fantasy football. So, like, you have all of these things that objectively, the NFL is a much better product. I said this last episode. Something like 53% of the first 32 games in the NFL have all come down to less than 1 score. That's been the point differential. It's a flip of a coin in the NFL, at least right now in this day and age, that you're going to see an incredible game. 78% of starting quarterbacks are either good or elite, and I think most people would agree by those metrics, especially when you look at the list. Just Google a list of starting quarterbacks in the NFL. So you look at pro football, it is the best product in sports, in my opinion. I think the only thing that could compare to it, I'm sure people over in Europe and South America would have something to say about soccer, football, and, cool, they're not wrong. The fans are dope. It is exciting. I'm a soccer guy. I can get there, but I don't know, man. Football's just dope. It's so much more exciting and electric. It's so much more violent. It's incredible. So why do we like college? It's like there's something special about college football. And I think that's always what people come back to. But man, there's something about it. And people will say these things that are kind of hard to define. They're a little nebulous. It's like, oh, but there's so much more heart in college because they're not doing it for the money, which isn't true anymore. And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. But like, what are you going to say? Like pro football players don't care. Like I know some of them do look at it like as a job. Like that's real. There are some pro football players that are like, this is my job. I'm clocking in. Maybe they're not, it's not like they're a kid in the backyard anymore. But these are professional competitors. You're going to tell me if they're in a close game that they're not just as fired up as they were when they were kids? I'm sure they are. So, they would say things like, oh, but it's just the energy, it's the atmosphere, and all that stuff is real. And I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, what makes it so cool? I don't know. I think there's a lot of nostalgia for the fans. A lot of college experience for alumni gets relived. I think it's an ode to how cool football is because I think a lot of it just has to do with the fact that the sport itself is that great. It's football. And so when you're seeing football played at a high level, it's amazing. I've gone to high school games before just to go watch because it's just fun. I love football. There's so many schools and in some areas that might not have a professional team, especially in the South. There's a lot of energy that goes into these college teams, especially in states like Mississippi and Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, although they have the Titans now. But, you have Arkansas, you got some of those Midwestern states. But like in the South, a lot of, the Falcons are the only team in the Southeast, kind of in a pretty big market. You got the Panthers, but that's a little farther north. But the point is, and the point that I'm trying to make is that there is a certain kind of energy there. And I think some of it too is the fact that like, people who go to college, it's between what age, 18 and 22. That's a really special time in your life. You're breaking away from the nest. You're going out on your own. And the college experience really is magical. And so, when you go to Georgia games, so many of the people who are showing up to these games are alumni. And, they've been going to these games for years. They got their season tickets. They travel really well. Their kids end up growing up in that. And then their kids end up growing up in that. So you have this like true like family of fandom. And it's all revolving around what was likely some of the best times in your entire life. So I think there's just, when you combine that with just, and when everyone's experiencing something similar, there is something really special about college football. And so to expose more people to that in a more exciting kind of way with an expanded playoff, I think this is a huge win and a great move by all. Anyone who's opposed to the smaller playoff to me is silly. I just go, why? Like, why? Like the first 4 teams get a bye anyways. So it's not like your precious Alabama or Georgia or whatever, Ohio State's going to lose in the first week. No, like you get a bye and then you get a rest and you get to play, the next teams. I think it's great, and it's like, what a great way to just enhance the competition. So I think really keep an eye on these next few years, you guys, in college football. And let's call it the next decade. What are things going to look like in 2032 after a decade of NIL and expanded college football playoffs? How different is college football going to look? I think it's going to look so much better. And I don't care about the NIL thing, because I think that it's going to kind of balance itself out because, if a bunch of alumni pool together some money and pay this kid $10 million and he ends up not being that good in college, well, I don't know if they're going to keep making that same kind of mistake. So like, like anything, if you have the ability to make some money with your talent and your gifts in any other setting in America, you can do that. So I think it's great. And yeah, is that going to make the talent spread out a little bit more? I think so, but I think that's a good thing. I'm okay with it. So why am I saying all this? It's because I just think that this playoff thing's fantastic. So yeah, I'd be curious to see what you guys think about that in the comments. It's doesn't seem like it's too controversial to be doing this, and yeah, I'm here for it. I hope it happens in 2024. The sooner, the better. Bring it on. Let's go. So last thing I'll say about college football is, watch the Georgia game, and I just watched the entire Tennessee-Florida game. That was a great game. Tennessee won by like 4 or 5 points, and Florida went for two on two different occasions. And at the end of the game, they kind of went, well, if we had just kicked the field goal, then we would have been down by a field goal at the end because they were down 5 in their last drive. But basically, the announcers were counting them out. They were going, well, Tennessee's going to win this. Florida now goes, 2-2 for the year. But then as that was happening, Florida went down and scored, and then they recovered an onside kick and then had a chance with the Hail Mary at the end. The announcers were jumping the gun on a lot of stuff, actually. But unbelievable game. Both the quarterbacks for Florida and Tennessee, they're very similar. Really athletic guys, really accurate, strong arms, really fast. And that's just kind of become the evolution of the quarterback position. It's you got to be able to move around in the pocket. And, man, these guys are exciting. So, yeah, I thought it was a great game. Tennessee looks to be back. That place was packed. I don't know if it's still the case, but I remember when I was playing like the NCAA football games that Tennessee's capacity at their stadium was the most in the country. It was over 100,000. I think that's still the case, although I know Michigan's close. If they might be first or second, whatever. But yeah, Tennessee threw down today, and I kind of like Tennessee. I like the orange, but yeah, great game. It was close. It was really close. I mean, really, like Florida was driving down. It was like 31-21 in the fourth quarter, and Florida's quarterback fumbled, and then Tennessee went down to score. So the score looked like really out of reach at that point. It was like 38-21, and then Florida fought their way back, and it kind of seemed crazy. But when they got that onside kick, it was like, holy shit, this is getting wild. Both those teams seem scrappy. Maybe the SEC East is getting better. I know they're getting more talent. There's a lot of new coaches, but both those guys, man, they looked like – I've seen a lot of Florida games, which is weird for me, but they've just had a lot of, like, really tough games this year, like, early on in their schedule. And, Kentucky and Utah and now this. So, yeah, both those teams look kind of scary. They're not as talented as Georgia. I think that is clear on tape, but – who knows? I mean, we'll see what happens. But, yeah, I'd be curious to see if the SEC East doesn't get a little more respect over these next couple of years with these new coaches at those two schools. So, yeah, it was a good game, though. So, go Tennessee, I guess. Moving away from football, we're going to do a quick little Braves segment here. So, the Braves, they're down in the Phillies series. They did get a win today on Saturday, and the Mets did lose to Oakland. So, we have now cut the gap to a game and a half behind the Mets. So, clock's ticking. After the Phillies, we have one more game against the Phillies. Then we have the Nationals, then the Mets. Then we end with the Marlins. And then for the Mets, they're playing Oakland right now, but then they play the Marlins, then they play us, then they end on the Nationals. So, like I've said for a few weeks now, it's just the writing's been on the wall. This is going to come down to that last series. If we can go to that last series, down a game, down a half a game, that'd be ideal because that means with a series win, we can jump them. Although, I guess what would it be technically? If we're down one game, we play 3. If we win 2, then we would be tied. So we would have to sweep them in order to come away with a lead. If we're down one game, that's correct. Yes. Whatever. I think it's just going to come down to that because, we both have kind of easy schedules. We might lose a couple before we see them, but we get the Nationals. I think honestly, what it is, the Nationals. It's a nice little gift for us before we get to the Mets series because they're so bad, and then we end on the Marlins, which also aren't great, but they kind of scare me more than the Nats. But yeah, if we can win the next few, and then, oh man, I don't know. The Braves are weird right now. The Braves they're a hot and cold team, and lately, honestly, they've been cold because they lost 2 in a row to the Phillies. They scored, I think, a total of 1 run in their first 2 games against the Phillies. They're a team built for home runs. That's what this team is like. The Atlanta Braves are second in the MLB in home runs. They're only behind the Yankees. And in the games that we hit home runs, we're great. In the games we don't, we suck. We're something like 9-25 or something like that. Chip Carey said this on the broadcast the other night. I don't remember the exact record, but when we don't hit a home run, we are god awful. That's just how this team's built. It's just different. And like the clock is ticking. We've been cold, so it's time to get hot. Because I remember last year going in, this is hindsight, of course, but like going into the playoffs, I remember me and my friend were kind of talking before, I think, the first series, and we were like, man, the Braves just seem scary right now. Like, they had made that huge comeback after we all know the story. But like, it wasn't like they had one hot streak and then kind of stopped. Like, they just kept, going into the playoffs, they were firing on all cylinders. And so, we still have time to get there before the playoffs, but God, I would like to do that and get this division so we can go ahead and just get kind of an easier go at it at the beginning of the playoffs. So we'll see what happens. I've said this before, hats off to the Mets, and it's been a great race in 2022. Cannot wait to see how this one's going to end. The Braves will make the postseason, so I'm not worried about that, but man, it's about to be some late nights because I'm probably going to record episodes after those games, and we'll see. Okay, so more baseball. Albert Pujols hits his 700th home run. What a beast, man. He joins Babe Ruth, Hank Aaron, and Barry Bonds and his drug dealer. Kidding, sort of. But Pujols, only 4 people have done it. 700's a huge number. And funny enough, this was making headlines a little bit, but the fan left with the ball, and Pujols was really chill about it. And people were like, oh man, like, why wouldn't the fan give the ball to Pujols? I'm like, dude, if you catch a home run like that, hell yeah, you leave the stadium. He got it verified or whatever, and then he left the stadium. That's genius. I mean, seriously, just give it back to him out of the goodness of your heart? Absolutely not. I mean, Tom Brady gave someone a Bitcoin for a football. Like, come on. Tom Brady got the better end of that deal so far. Bitcoin's been it's a lot less valuable than it was when Tom Brady first did that, which is hilarious. But people pay good money for that kind of stuff. And yeah, if you catch it, shit, man, who cares? I don't know. I don't think that's weird. There seemed to be, there was an article on Yahoo where they were kind of talking about this guy leaving the stadium with the ball as if that was like a lame thing to do. And I'm like, no, I'm 100% out of there if I catch one of those. But yeah, Pujols, his comments about it, at least, this is, I guess, since I've already referenced the article, Pujols said this about the fan leaving with the ball. He was not upset. He was not upset or worried. He said, souvenirs are for the fans. I don't have any problem if they want to keep it. If they want to give it back, that's great. But at the end of the day, I don't focus on material stuff. Good for you, Pujols. It is cool to see this guy make his way through the history books because I'm just a big fan of the guy. He seems like he's done everything right in his career. There's not really any noise about he cheated his way to the top. I mean, because what a bummer about Barry Bonds doing what he did, because Barry Bonds was a fantastic baseball player. Would he have done what he did without steroids? Who's to say? But when he was with the Pirates, he was a beast. I want to say he was a 40-40 guy with 40 steals and 40 home runs in a season. He was always good, and he was electric. He was fast. He was athletic. He had probably the best eye I think I've ever seen in baseball. I mean, I don't know. I mean, he walked more than anyone. He just took people deep. He was a tough out. I do think he might have been the best hitter that I've ever seen. But what a drag that toward the end of his career and his chase, that was also coupled with all the noise. I mean, it is what it is. It's what you sign up for when you make choices like that. But the fact that Pujols has only been good vibes, and it hasn't even been, and maybe this is different in St. Louis, but it hasn't felt like some obnoxious goodbye ceremony with every single game. I'm sure all these stadiums are doing the Braves did it. They brought him out. They said, hey, thank you for your service to the game. Everyone gave him a standing ovation. Then they played ball. But Kobe Bryant, I was so sick, and I'm a RIP, love Kobe, but his last year was obnoxious to me. when those kind of things happen, when people are on their way out, I'm like, man, like, honor him, give him a standing ovation, cool, then play the game. And that's kind of how it seemed with Pujols. Even with them putting him in the home run derby, I don't know, whatever. He at least seemed like he was having fun about the whole thing. He just doesn't seem like he takes himself too seriously. So just really happy for that guy. He's also, in case you didn't know this, he's third all-time in RBIs, behind only Babe Ruth and Hank Aaron. And you know what? Let's be real for a second here. If Babe Ruth played in today's game, would he be trash or no? What do you think? Babe Ruth going up against consistent 99 mile an hour, just like, I don't know, corner painting pitches constantly with movement. I mean, like, I guess the fields are shorter these days than they were back then. That's real. So pop outs for him back then would probably be homers now. I mean, it's the great Bambino. He's a legend. But really, I mean, seriously, you think he would hit these guys like he was hitting guys back then? I mean, I don't know. Who's to say? We'll never know. But he's a legend, as is Hank Aaron, as is Barry Bonds, and as is Albert Pujols. So congratulations, buddy. Another fun fact about Pujols, in case you didn't know, and this is different from today's game, Albert Pujols did not hit below 300 in a season until his 11th season in the majors. How incredible is that? Albert Pujols, rookie year, 329. Second year, 314. Third year, 359. 331. 330. 331. 327. 357. 327. 312. Oh, and then he really drops off the edge with a 299 season in 2011. I mean, that's insane, right? I mean, that's absolutely incredible. And he never got back over 300 after that year. Once he stopped hitting 300, he never got back over. But then it was 299, 285, 258, 272. But that's also how the game has changed. I mean, Matt Olson right now is batting like 233. The dude's like Marcell Ozuna, who's batting like 220 something. Kyle Schwarber is hitting like 214, and he made the All-Star team. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. So maybe the shift has had a big part to play in people's batting averages dropping off, which is probably why in that, collective bargaining agreement, that, that thing, the lockout that happened last season. I know a big part of that was after next year, or maybe after this year, they are banning the shift in the infield. So who knows? Maybe we'll see some of these averages creep back up. But Albert Pujols, for the first 11 seasons, or I guess would that be 10? Yeah, for the first 10 seasons of his career, he batted over 300. His career batting average is 296. So the dude's third all-time in RBIs, fourth all-time in home runs, and a 296 career batting average. I mean, well done, Albert Pujols. He's legit. If anyone remembers some of like the old MLB games, like MLB The Show and stuff, whenever like a player would come up, you would hit like X or something, and you would see their hot and cold zones, and you'd see like, different parts of the strike zone that were lit up in different ways. And when Albert Pujols came up to the plate and you hit that button, it was just bright red. The entire strike zone was bright red because that's just how good he was. I relate a lot of my memories of people with how I've used them in video games. Do you guys have the same thing? Like Madden players? Yeah. I remember like Amon Green a lot. Clinton Portis was great in Madden. I mean, Vic, obviously, let's just be real. He's the best Madden player of all time. But Donovan McNabb was a beast in Madden. Really, really good. Fun to play with, Baseball games, Scott Rowland. He was a beast in like the MLB The Show 04. Pujols, of course. Giambi was like cold in all of his zones except for like the upper left-hand corner. He had like a red sliver. That was weird. He actually seen, this is funny. If Giambi played today, we'd look at him differently because back then he would hit home runs, but he would bat like 245 and I would be like, man, this guy sucks. He only hits home runs, but that's not like that weird these days to like hit home runs and to bat in the mid 200s. So, okay, I'm getting off track, but that's really all I got for this episode, so I hope that was good. I hope you enjoyed the little college football playoff talk. UGA, let's see real quick before I close things out. What's our next game? Next game, excuse me, still feeling the sickness. What the hell? Should be done by the next episode, I hope. So next game is at Missouri. Then we got Auburn, then Vandy. Then we got Florida, Tennessee, Mississippi State, Kentucky. So it gets a little tougher for us, at least as it seems right now, based on watching some of these teams. But still looking pretty easy. Missouri shouldn't be much of a threat. Auburn's always fun. That's in Georgia this year, so it should be good. So yeah, go Dogs. And to circle back around on our trivia question, if you remember, the question was, speaking of UGA, who is the University of Georgia's leading receiver? Who has the most receiving yards in UGA history? Do you know it? Can you think of it? He played from 1999 to 2002 when he had 3,093 career receiving yards, fourth all-time in SEC history, and his name was Terrence Edwards. Terrence Edwards. So if you knew that, good on you. You are a real deal fan. So that's going to do it for me. I'm going to check back in tomorrow night. Might have some guests with me tomorrow. Not sure exactly how that's going to play out just yet, but we're going to do a full NFL recap because I watch all the games, of course, especially when the Falcons are playing away games. Because for home games, I'm at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, you know what I'm saying? But for away games, I get to sit back, I get to watch everything. So we're going to do a full NFL week 3 recap. We're going to do a Falcons segment. We're going to deep dive into the Falcons game, where they are at. I still have faith in the Falcons, you guys. I do. You got to think, we've played two very, very good teams so far. We've lost by a total of 5 points. 5 points combined between the Rams, defending Super Bowl champions, and the Saints, who are Super Bowl aspiring players themselves. So aren't we all? Aren't we all? But, the Saints are good. And we blew it with them. So, yeah, I'm not discouraged, though, watching these guys play. Excited to see what they can do against the Seahawks. We'll see if they can turn it on, because they have the Seahawks and they come back and get the Browns. Winnable games, especially seeing how they played two teams that I consider to be better than the Seahawks and the Browns and the Saints and the Rams. So that'll be enough out of me. I will shut up. Enjoy your Sunday. Enjoy your week. If you're listening to this throughout the week, I hope you are having a good one. Be sure to go out there and to leave places better than you found it. And be sure to give more than you take. Be sure to contribute at work with your family. See how you can make other people's day and not make it all about you, because that's how it's done, everybody. So I love you, and I'll see you next time. See ya.